Let's begin with the big things driving today's politics, most of all this. Just 40 days on the job, and President Trump says tonight's primetime speech is a chance to improve on his early report card.
I think I've done great things, but I don't think I and my people, I don't think we've explained it well enough to the American public. I think I get an A in terms of what I've actually done, but in terms of messaging, I'd give myself a C or a C+.
All right, how are you going to change that then?
Well, maybe I change it during the speech.
Maybe he changes it during the speech. He also gave himself an A+ for effort. Quickly around the table, grade the president, grading himself.
Well, I would just add that C, I don't think was really to himself. I think that was to Sean Spicer and some of his actual communications team. So I'd give him a B for grading himself. B for grading himself? You think he was maybe referring to the travel ban folks there?
Boy, that sure sounds familiar. I can't recall a president giving himself higher marks for message than a communications. President Obama also said the policy's spot on. It's the sales pitch that needs work. So I think this president is following in that example. But I've not heard him say C before. That's pretty interesting for this president to acknowledge any room for growth, shall we say.
That's right.
Jeff's exactly right. Every president does this at some point, says we need to communicate the message better. But the question is, if the issue is improving the jobs picture for a certain segment of Americans, what has he done? What is he going to do? That message hasn't gotten through.
Well, and it went so well when Obama did it. I mean, it went completely fine. No, but I do. There are also, one of the differences here is some of these policies aren't even formed yet. They're not even pitched. They're not even, we don't really know what he's talking about on some of these very critical issues.
Right. He has signed these executive actions. He certainly has dominated the conversation. If you're talking about setting the political agenda, Donald Trump wins. Whether it's here in Washington or out in the country, everybody's talking about the agenda. How many of these things will get to the finish line? That we don't know. One thing we do know tonight, though, we're going to ask, what's the president's tone? How much of it is an inside game, talking to the people there in the room? How much of it is an outside game, talking to people watching at home? One thing we're pretty certain of is the Democrats already don't like it. Just moments ago, you just heard at the top of the show, the Democratic leader in the House, Nancy Pelosi. Well, here's the flip side in the Senate, Chuck Schumer.
He talks like a populist, but governs like a pro-corporate, pro-elite, hard-right ideologue.
What do the Democrats do tonight in the sense that this is President Trump's first big moment? It's a celebration for Republicans of power. They control the White House. They control both chambers, and we'll get to them in a minute. They have a lot of internal party issues to deal with. But what's the challenge for the Democrats?
Well, they certainly don't stand and clap with a ton of frequency. But one thing I'm sort of curious about is Donald Trump is someone who plays to a room and plays to a crowd, and he's going into a deeply divided room, which is not unique. That's often how it is when a president goes to address Congress. But I wonder if by the Democrats just sort of not being this cheering, frenetic crowd that he's so used to can kind of affect that, interplay that he needs to elevate a speech.
Can he give it with the virtual reality, like he's in an airport hangar at a rally?
I mean, for him, it's a small crowd. I mean, for most politicians, that's a big room. But for him, it's a small crowd in terms of his rally speeches and other things. But look, Democrats are still, they're in a much different place than they were 6 weeks or so ago. Then we're talking about how Chuck Schumer is going to work with this president. Those things are out the window because of the activists. The left side of this party is leading the leaders, if you will. But I do think they still do not want to be obstructionists. I do think they want to find some things to have accomplishments come next year. But what would those be now? I can't think of anything that will be in tonight's speech.
First, I want to know if there's going to be an argument over the size of the crowd at tonight's speech. There were more than 500 members of Congress there. Never happened before.
Right.
But second, this creates an opportunity. The presence of the Democrats creates an opportunity because this is a president who, since election night, when he did have the one line about governing for all Americans, being president for all Americans, has been seen as passing up opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to reach out to the other side. He's spoken to his base. He's spoken to his supporters. That's been his approach. Now the Democrats will be right in front of him, which does create a theatrical opportunity, if he wants it, to talk to them in a different way.
And so how does he do that? Because the White House says this will be uplifting and optimistic, that it will be, they don't make the connection, but it won't be as dark and sober as like American Carnage, as we heard in the inaugural address. Will the president do that? Is this his moment to reach out to Democrats? Or is it a smart political strategy, knowing they're going to say no anyway, to come in and have combat?
It doesn't seem like he's really made an effort to reach out to Democrats. And at the same time, they're not reaching out to him. Look at even the guests. Well, members of Congress are allowed to invite a guest to sit in the gallery, which is above where the president speaks. They are people who are on DACA. They are people who are worried about losing their health care. They're immigrants who may have had trouble getting into the country or have had families getting into the country. They're going in with a focus on the issues that they don't like about the president and what the president has pushed. So he's kind of walking. So at the same time, while it's hard to believe he will really meaningfully reach out to them, they're not really reaching back.
It is a two-way street, let's say, not liking each other at the moment right now. It'll get overshadowed today because our focus tonight and even for the rest of this hour will be mostly on the speech. But how much does this affect the climate in Washington? It's supposed to be bipartisan investigations in both the House and the Senate into this Russia meddling and whether any Trump associates reached out to Russians, had contacts during their campaign. But already, especially on the House side, you have this.
There is no evidence that I've been presented of regular contact with anybody within the Trump campaign.
There's no evidence that's been even received by the committee. We are still in the process of gathering documents, examining documents at the intelligence community offices. We've had no witnesses, issued no subpoenas. It's the beginning of the investigation, not the end.
You have these partisan tensions, and the Democrats essentially saying that they see an effort by Republicans to sort of shut this down before it begins. Some of that's politics, some of that's some missteps maybe by some of the Republicans involved. But how does that climate affect the mood in town right now?
Well, I think for starters, it's not great for the White House because even if they want to be exonerated by these investigations, which they claim they will be, you know, you can't have the imprimatur of sort of partisanship. I mean, if they really want to be exonerated, it has to seem like a bipartisan, non-political, non-ideological verdict. And so I think that's something the White House is going to have to work to make sure occurs.
And somebody help me with this. For the second day in a row, George W. Bush, who was largely absent during the 8 Obama years, is back. Now, he's trying to promote an agenda of his to help out military families and veterans. So he's not coming out to criticize President Trump. He's coming out for something that's very important to him. But as he gives those interviews, he's being asked some questions and tells People magazine this.
I'm optimistic about where we'll end up. I mean, yes, I don't like the racism, and I don't like the name calling, and I don't like the people feeling alienated. Nobody likes that. On the other hand, we've been through these periods before, and we've always had a way to come out of it. I'm more optimistic than some.
Doesn't directly criticize President Trump there, doesn't directly criticize the climate there, but just a reminder as we wait for the president tonight, what a different type of, that's our last Republican president. Yeah. This one communicates very differently.
Completely different communicator, very disciplined, and you saw that in the interview with Matt Lauer of NBC. You could see how he was careful to say certain things, not say other things. Doesn't directly criticize the president, does speak up for the importance of the media in a democracy, and then brings up on his own Vladimir Putin. Right. Just an aside, by the way, just let me mention the elephant in the room.
Just popped into his head.
To bring up Vladimir Putin, it was a rather effective interview, just speaking in terms of getting a message across.
I mean,